Hi, Martin. So we're renting at the moment, but we are currently thinking about buying. So we're just wondering, is this a good time to be buying the current market as it is?
The sellers didn't declare the fact that they have a shared sewer going across their land.
We've recently gained planning permission for a loft conversion. It's just planning that space, what we might use that for, you know.
We're thinking of buying a buy-to-let property. Do you think now is the right time?
If we want to knock through a dining room sort of lounge in our Victorian terrace, what do we do? Where do we start?
Hi, Martin Roberts here, introducing my brand new Property Surgery. Your chance to ask me specific questions from the world of property. It's all done on Zoom at a mutually convenient time. It's half an hour or an hour if you need more time. So make sure you book up now, and I look forward to seeing you for your personal Zoom property surgery.
Hi.
Hi, so what questions have you got?
Well, funnily enough, I've just been in the process of purchasing a property as a rental. My solicitor has actually found out that the sellers didn't declare the fact that they have a shared sewer going across their land. And unfortunately, they've built a conservatory over the top of it, of which they didn't get planning for.
Ooh.
So I was kind of wondering what your thoughts were on this and whether I should actually go ahead and proceed. It's not my dream home. It's going to be a working rental. So it's a business asset, really.
The problem with sewers is that they're sort of the right of the sewerage company. So Bristol Water, South West Water, whoever it might be, and they have the rights to access it. And if it goes wrong underneath the property, then the property will have to come down. So that is the risk. Now, you can take out insurance for most things. So there will be an insurance that you can take out, which specifically covers against that sewage pipe underneath that property breaking at any point in the future, and you having to knock down the conservatory and rebuild it. And in fact, the insurance isn't much. Okay. So don't let that necessarily put you off. My only concern is if they've not told you that, what else haven't they told you?
Well, there is something else as well.
Hi, Martin. So we're renting at the moment, but we are currently thinking about buying. So we're just wondering, is this a good time to be buying the current market as it is?
So I guess it depends on your life plan, really. I mean, the great thing about renting is flexibility, okay? Because it enables you to just up sticks, and you know, if you've got a month contract, or normally an AST would be 6 months, but you can normally work around that. A lot of people, you know, sometimes view property as a bit of a, I don't know, noose around their neck or a weight around it thing. And I personally don't, because I think if you've got a property, then even if you don't need to actually live in it, you can always use it to rent out to generate you income, to enable you to do things. So for instance, you could have the house, you could rent out, you could go traveling and use the money that you're getting from it. And also a lot of people get sort of sucked into the kind of what ifs. What about next? What is a market? The interest rate's going to go up. A property is going to go. Price is going to go down, and you end up getting stuck in something called analysis paralysis, where you just do nothing as a result. So I think you know, depending on what your personal circumstances are, you know, the market is buoyant at the moment. There might be instances where it drops in certain places, but I generally, if you're buying the right kind of property and you pay the right kind of price for it, you're not going to go far wrong. And it doesn't need to be something that you live in. It can be something that ends up generating you an income. So if you can financially, with interest rates being so low, I honestly think it's not a bad thing to consider doing. I don't know all your personal circumstances, but you know, right now, you know, you know, when I took out a house, bought my first house, you know, God knows how many years ago, the interest rates were 15%. I mean, that was seriously nasty. but now it's like, you know, okay. So yeah. I guess it depends on your personal circumstances, and you know, I don't know if you're thinking about traveling, or you know, starting a family, or you know, and how much space you need and where you like. I mean, obviously, if you see your personal circumstances changing in the near future, then that, you know, that might be a reason not to settle down in a particular place. But as I said, you know, by investing in a property, it doesn't have to be forever, and it can be the start of something which can generate you what's called a passive income. So, you know, which is something you might want to, because one thing that I think that you know, the last 6 months has taught us all is that, you never can predict anything. Goodness knows what's around the corner. So anything you can do to sort of generate a bit of alternative income is probably not a bad thing.
Fantastic. No, thank you very much.
We built the house in 2004 as a couple with no kids. We've now got 3 kids. We've pretty much maxed our space out. We've recently gained planning permission for a loft conversion.
Oh, brilliant.
We're looking to do in the summer. It's just planning that space, what we might use that for. We've got ideas of it being a master bedroom ensuite, but then it's big enough possibly to create 2 bedrooms and put 2 of the kids up there. So what would you recommend?
I don't know how big your house is, but to create big rooms, it just makes even a small house feel big. So I'm not into, unless you desperately need the extra rooms, I think it'd be so nice to have a room that you could go in and go, and maybe you need that, okay?
Yeah.
Just to give you that space, because if you think about big houses, they have what separates them apart. They have big rooms. Okay, but so if you can create the big room that you would get in a much bigger house in your house, and it can make it feel like a much bigger house. So I would be tempted to give yourself that space. I mean, everyone's going to come up there anyway if it turns out to be a really cool room. But, unless you're desperate for the space.
Unless we lock it.
Unless you lock it, yeah, exactly. Unless you're desperate for the space, you deserve a really nice room.
It's big enough to have our own seated area, and we could have a fridge and a TV and bar.
Oh wow! Yeah. What about a freestanding bath and all that kind of stuff?
Yes, we could do.
And I think that would give the house a bit of wow factor as well. So I think in terms of adding value, a really impressive bedroom is going to be seen by the person who's looking around the house as their bedroom. And it could just swing them in terms of,
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, there is something else as well. This property has 2 garages. It's a semi-detached property, and it flagged up for me because it had 2 garages. One garage which was built with the property, the other one the owners built it. Unfortunately, they got a planning application for it and they got it passed, but they broke the covenant. And there was a covenant by the original builders to say that you were not allowed to build any properties or garages surrounding your house. I kind of don't know what to do.
Okay, so I'm not legally qualified, so I can't answer specific legal questions. And it does sound like something that your solicitor is going to have to really go through with a fine-tooth comb. But once you start hearing of lots of things that have been done without getting the right approvals and da-da-da, probably your gut instinct starts to say, So unless there's something super duper amazing about this place, I wonder if you should be looking at alternatives just to have on the back burner. Definitely your solicitor should be on super guard, and I think that they need to get some kind of a declaration that there's nothing else going to come out of the woodwork. Now, again, covenants are complicated things. But again, you can get insurance cover against specific covenants, and anyone ever coming after you, against that covenant. Now, the reality is the builder could potentially come after you or the owner of the property, because unfortunately the covenants carry on, right? It's not just like, it wasn't just the previous owner. If you buy a property, you buy it with the covenants. So at some point in the future, the builder came along and said, well, I've got a covenant on this. Now, the reality is the person who has the covenant is the one who has to instigate any kind of claim. And in that instance, you've got to go, what was the covenant put there for? What was the builder trying to stop? Was it to protect the other properties in the area? Was it to protect the neighbours? Or was it to mean that whoever it was had to pay him a bit more money if they built a garage? So you're going to think, what was the reason for the covenant being put in place? And that will give you an indication of whether or not the builder or whoever it is that owns the covenant is likely to come back to you and make a claim. Now, as I said, you can cover yourself, you can take out insurance, it's a one-off payment. If you assume it's going to be 500 quid, it's normally less than that. So, you might just decide it's worth taking the risk.
We're thinking of buying a buy-to-let property. Do you think now is the right time?
There is a huge demand right now for rented accommodation. A lot of uncertainty in the market, which I think is causing a lot of people to be a little bit concerned. But for that reason, a lot of people not choosing to buy. So what do they need? They need somewhere to rent. And that's on top of the existing demand, which is already there. So I think now is a really great time to buy to let. But it's all about yield. Okay, do you understand what yield is?
No.
So
really.
Yield is the amount of money it's going to cost you to buy something. So say it's going to cost you £100,000 to buy a property, and then the amount you get back as a proportion of that. So say you get back £10,000 for ease of argument or calculation. So then if you spent £100,000, you're getting £10,000 back. Your yield, your gross yield or whatever it might be, is 10%. Okay. Now you might have to take off things like mortgages, you might have to take off other expenses, but you're trying to get a yield that is delivering you more than you're going to get in a bank. Well, at the moment that's not going to be difficult, is it? Right, so as long as
I don't know what the situation's like with mortgages at the moment. Buy-to-let mortgages.
So you can get buy-to-let mortgages, and that the good thing about buy-to-let mortgages is that they're very geared towards property. So it's not about what your income is, it's about what the property can generate. So a buy-to-let mortgage will be based on that yield. So it will be based on what kind of rental you could get in. So if you're looking at parts of the country where properties are quite cheap, then you can get some phenomenal yields. I mean, I'm meeting people who are getting yields of 15, 20%. I mean, that's literally 15 or 20% of whatever money you put in, you're getting back every year. So if you think about that, in 5 years' time, at those kind of rates, you're going to have got your initial capital back through the yield, through the rent you've got, and you end up with you still own the asset. That's why potentially buy-to-let is quite appealing. Now, there have been some changes in the market, and there have been some changes to rules and regulations, which have meant that you have to structure things a little carefully. And certainly if you're doing it, if you can, you'd think about doing it through a company rather than personally, because then you can still get some of the tax advantages which they took away. But I'm a huge fan of buy-to-let. I think it's a great thing to have in your portfolio. And right now, if anything, what's happened has proved to people is that you've got to have a bit of diversity in your income. I don't know your own personal circumstances, but the idea you've got something working away there, bringing in £500 a month or whatever, that I think provides a bit of security at a time when people are a little bit freaked out.
Okay, so if we want to knock through a dining room sort of lounge in our Victorian terrace, I mean, how do we go about that? What do we need? Do we need to dig up footings, or do we need to? What do we do? Where do we start, really?
Well, the most important thing is knowing about the structure of the building, because what you don't want to do is start knocking things around and have things that are above whatever you're knocking around fall down on you. Okay, it's a bit of a cliche, but it's really important that you know what's above whatever it is you're contemplating taking out before you take it out. So that is where common sense and a structural engineer have their say. Look at the sort of fabric of the build. Often, if you're thinking about taking out walls, what are the walls made of? Okay, and it's a simple case often of banging them, and do they feel solid? Are they what's called a supporting wall? Is there something above them? And you can't just take out what's called a supporting wall without it causing all sorts of problems. Okay, now something called a stud partition wall, which you might be familiar with, which is like almost like a dividing wall that's been put in afterwards. It doesn't have any structural integrity to it, and it's often just bits of wood with plasterboard on them.
So it's like a fill-in thing.
Yeah, pretty much. You can generally take those out without causing too much of a problem. A stud, but a supporting wall will need to have whatever it is that's above it supported. That's where you'll have to have probably a structural engineer work out the strength of something called an RSJ, which is a rolled steel joist, which is like a big metal sort of beam, which will go in and support the wall. And it's really important that goes in first, and then you take the wall out afterwards. Otherwise, it's a very expensive day at the office.
Okay, good advice.
That's great. So does that help?
Yeah, that's great. Really good. Thanks for your advice. I don't think the house is going to fall in on us now. So.
Thank you, Martin. Lovely to speak to you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Of course, it's quite tricky to view properties at the moment. I don't know what the rules and regulations are with estate agents, but can you go and view properties?
Yes, social distancing rules have to apply. I mean, a lot of people are doing viewings online, which is not a bad starting point. okay, and there's a lot of people have created some fairly flashy videos, but I would just warn you that obviously if somebody's created a flashy video, they're not going to show you the dry and rot, they're not going to show you the damp, and they're not going to show you the neighbours from hell. So before you buy, even in these circumstances, you really do need to visit the property beforehand. So but there are ways around it. You know, you can do it, you know, you could actually go with the estate agent, they could have their camera, you know, and walk you round. But you really do need to see the property before you make any final decisions.
That's fantastic, Martin. Thanks ever so much. Really useful advice. We're going to go and contact the bank now and see what mortgage we can sort out.
Good stuff.
Great, thanks, Martin.
This really is your chance to have your personal questions answered by me. So book up now, and I look forward to seeing you on Zoom very soon.